This is Anime Out of Context, a comedy review podcast hosted by a weeb of the highest order, alongside a cynical man who knows nothing about anime. Our show features spoilers, explicit language, and poor fact-checking. Neither of our hosts are experts on any topic, and none of their opinions should be taken as fact. Thank you for listening, and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Anime Out of Context, the show where I attempt to explain the sometimes weird, sometimes wonderful, but always hilarious world of anime.
And I skip the ring and go down, down, down to the lake of fire.
I'm Shaun Rollins.
I'm Remington Chase.
How you feeling there, Dante?
I've been better.
But Remington, you should be great because after all, it's Halloween! Or at the very least, it's pretty close to Halloween.
Happy nearly Halloween, everybody.
Isn't this the most wonderful time of year, Remington?
Sometime.
Oh, Remington, you're not still hurting after last week, are you?
I mean, I'm not all the way better. We'll see. It depends what's in store this week.
Yeah, you had a brief stint in our local asylum to try and cure you of that very strange rant you had.
Yeah, don't worry. They've taken out all Hegelian ideas away from me. Obviously, it's all about Horkheimer and Adorno anyway, so...
Oh, goodness.
Let's get that critical theory up, yeah.
And
I just like to be as obscure as possible.
If I wasn't your friend, I would...
maybe two people listening right now who will understand that, 5 more will be familiar with it, and no one will enjoy it.
So basically 2 plus me is what you're saying.
Yeah.
If I hadn't known your taste in the past, I would have thought you were just pulling a bunch of shit out of your ass, which you do tend to do on occasion.
That's my life.
Yeah, but Remington, I made you a promise, and unlike some people, I keep my promises. I promised you that we would do a genuine horror anime this time around.
Of which we've only ever done one, and it was earlier this month, and it's finally out now, so.
Yes. So,
as corporate shills, we need to remind you to go check it out.
yes,
Go check out Violet's Voyager, y'all. Also go check out Harry Potter, y'all.
corporate shills that we did not get paid to shill for. I mean, we're so good at it, it's amazing they don't pay us.
I know. I don't see why they wouldn't go to us more.
Clearly. But Remington, this time around, it's actually going to be as anime as it gets. It's going to be, hand-drawn, animated, and it's also going to be horror. You're going to have lots of violence, lots of blood, and just a taste of child murder.
Oh, that's what I like to hear.
Because, Remington, today we're going to be talking about what many consider to be a very classic horror anime.
Okay.
All right, now tell me, Remington, have you ever heard of an anime entitled Higurashi no Naku Koro?
Oh, but of course. In the Chase family, we would all band around the jack-o'-lanterns and watch it in its mouth every Halloween.
Yeah? Would you give me a brief synopsis of what you think Higurashi no Naku Koro is about?
Well, it's about a group of ragtag friends, right? A group of friends who go out there. They discover a very dark secret that needs to be uncovered. Unfortunately, through discovering the secret, one of them is especially affected, and terrible things start happening to each of them.
No, keep going. I need to start writing this down so I can send it to Stephen King.
Fun fact, I'm the generator for all of Stephen King's stories. I just start talking, and he's like, oh, okay, we can work with that.
Yeah, we've made bank off of the most recent It film. Goodness, because, that went well.
Oh, yeah. So I feel like I nailed it.
You're not.
Very specific, obviously.
Yeah, very specific. It's almost like you just described every 80s child horror movie out there with an extra dash of Stephen King for flavor.
Darn right.
But while you are pretty close in some regards, Remington, of course you're still wrong.
I mean, yeah, that's a given.
But Higurashi no Naku Koro, or the English title is simply When They Cry.
Oh, okay.
But most people just call it Higurashi for short because...
Is it the hills that are crying? I've heard the hills have eyes. Are they crying?
No. I hear they're actually alive with the sound of music.
Oh, these hills, man.
Man, they get into a lot of stuff. They even let the Nazis capture people. It's horrible.
Oh, shit. I'd cry too.
Yeah. So now that we've gotten our musical and like paranoia jokes out of the way, let's get into Higurashi, shall we? So what this show is about is it's about a young man who moves to a small town that he used to live in as a child. Very standard, you know.
Yeah.
Yes. He moves into this quiet village known as Hinamizawa in the summer of 1983.
Okay, old school.
Yeah, so it's properly dated. By the way, this anime came out in 2006, so it's not set in the time period it was released in, which makes things interesting.
Yeah.
And he makes some friends with some of the local people. This is such a small town that there is only one classroom available, and multiple grades use this one classroom, ranging from elementary school to low high school.
Oh boy, wow, okay.
Yeah, that's how tiny this town is. There's only about 7 or 8 kids in the class at any given time, all of them different grades. But of course, you need that education, and it was the 80s, so that's not as likely that they would have more regulated.
It was the
stuff.
80s when we were like, yeah, kids can do don't worry about that. Don't worry about kids. They'll figure it out.
There's a reason Stephen King got very popular in the 80s.
Before parenting existed.
Very much so. In fact, the parents in this are practically non-existent, so that's just the way it goes. So Keiichi Maibara has just moved into the quiet village and has become good friends with his schoolmates Rina, Mion, Satoko, and Rika.
All right, won't remember a single one of those.
Well, you might after we're done here.
We'll see.
Yeah, the 4 main girls of this story. And weirdly enough, there seems to be some kind of underlying darkness to the town.
Okay.
You know, as all small town stories tend to have.
Of course. Small town's dark secrets.
Yes. And around this time, the village is preparing for its annual festival. And then Keiichi learns about the local legend of this festival. And to the horror, the legend surrounding it involves several gruesome and grisly murders that happened around the same time every year. And
hopefully the festival isn't celebrating that. It's not like,
No.
Yeah, in memoriam. Woo!
It's more of like your generic, like middle of the year summer, celebration, festival, fireworks, candy, all kinds of fun stuff.
And there just so happened to be a bunch of grisly stuff.
Yes.
With the festival.
That's just the local legend surrounding it and all that jazz. And several murders and disappearances in recent years. That's not the greatest thing to learn about in a small town that you just moved to that is very distant from any sign of help.
Yeah.
It's almost a cause for concern.
You know, Shaun, I'm still just like, so you're in a celebratory mood, right?
Yeah.
It's summertime.
Yeah.
But I mean, how could you forget about like a bunch of grisly murders? Wouldn't that like dampen the mood? Like if you had a summer holiday that just happened to go hand in hand with like a bunch of death, also completely unrelated. Do you want to come to my July 4th bar?
Only if you come to my Valentine's Day party.
Cool. All right, neat.
Then we can all celebrate Christmas together.
It'll be great.
But the series of murders and horror is more around the entire town itself. And anytime he wants to bring it up to people or tries to find out more about it, because, you know, that's a curious thing to find out about, all the locals kind of ignore him and shun away the idea of talking about it. Because, you know, that's kind of some dark shit, and you don't want to be talking about some of the worst experiences of your life.
See, and we're sure this is a Japanese show and not, for example, a different Eastern Asian country that also has certain potentially grisly things that wouldn't like to be mentioned. That's especially been in the news recently. Obviously, they don't need to be mentioned because why would anybody?
You're very on the nose, Remington. Yeah, and we're not going to get into that bullshit because holy hell.
Then we'll get banned.
Yeah.
No, you weren't.
Oh, fuck, no. Censor it, Dylan, censor it.
God damn it, Shaun.
No, we're going to get banned. Now our audience there is the biggest one we have.
We're going to get hunted down.
Oh, God. But if people really have a question about that, it's kind of obvious who we side with, isn't it?
I mean, with reality.
Yeah. But politics aside, or rather basic human rights aside, I should say.
Oh, don't worry. They're being put aside.
Oh.
As we speak.
Oh God, that's horrible. I fear for the future.
All right, so a bunch of bad things happened in the past. No one wants to talk about it.
Yeah, and for some reason they all seem to be connected to the festival as well as the village's patron god.
Okay.
Because a lot of locations in old school Japanese religion have local deities of sorts. You know, what different shrines could be different shrines to an individual god who are subservient to other gods. I could go into a couple hour-long discussion on how Shinto and other old Japanese religions work, but I'm not qualified to do that.
You could do that, but it would just be filled with inaccuracies.
Yeah, and for all I know, everything I just said was probably fairly inaccurate as well. That's just from my loose understanding of what anime has taught me. Which
We have the disclaimer. I think that allows us to say anything we want.
Yeah,
that's how that works.
That's pretty sure. Hey, maybe we won't get banned. I mean, they respect those, don't they?
Yeah.
Clearly. So, after asking his new friends about the incidents because you're curious, they remain suspiciously silent and refuse to talk to him about the subject. And as time goes on, more and more bizarre and dark events occur, as well as the possible resurgence of these murders. And that is where the show begins, and I don't want to tell you much more than that, Remington.
Ooh, okay. And this is a series, not a movie?
It's a series.
Okay, interesting. I am so it's sort of like a horror mystery type deal, which I appreciate because you have a lot of things like that in the West, right?
Right.
Where especially recently it's become even more popular with true crime becoming popular. You have even things like Stranger Things, which would definitely fit almost exactly within this mold. But I'm digging it. I feel like I could definitely be down for what this is putting down.
Okay, Remington. And before we get into it, I'm just gonna add an additional disclaimer here. Guys, Higurashi is fucked up. If you are of a young and impressionable sort or a bit of a wuss like Remington from time to time,
Yep.
then proceed with caution, as this show contains some very gruesome violence, adult themes, and just all kinds of nasty fuckery, as it were. But if you're cool with all that, like you're cool with us for some reason, then please give it a watch, as it's quite an interesting experience. And with that being said, Remington, let's delve into the deep, dark world that is Higurashi. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back after consuming the first 4 episodes of the hit 2006 anime Higurashi no Naku Koro ni. And Remington, that was a lot of murder, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, for just a first 4 episode story.
Sean?
Yeah?
I don't think I get it. Like,
Really?
I understand, like, everything that happened, but I don't get it.
It. What do you mean when you say it? I mean, I've seen the movie It, and that was pretty easy to get.
Yeah, I definitely get it, but I don't get it. I don't understand sort of what it was going for 90% of the time.
Really?
I understand all of the components, but putting them together in the manner in which they did, I don't think I get it.
Interesting. I don't think we've ever had something that genuinely confused you like this.
Well, see, and it's not like I'm confused. Like, I understand what happened. And also, spoilers ahead.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Also, I will say potential light spoilers on a couple anime we covered in our first handful of episodes.
Really?
I would heavily recommend, without naming specific names because that in of itself might be considered a spoiler, I would recommend a handful of episodes from like our first 10.
Are you? Is this your clever way of trying to get people to go back and listen to our old episodes? Because I don't recommend that entirely, because we've improved since then. But
No, but at least like watch the anime of a couple of them, namely if they happen to involve magical girls.
oh my goodness. Hopefully I'll be able to leave some of your questions then, Rem, because this anime is complicated, to say the least.
I guess.
Well, complicated as a whole. You've only seen the very beginning of it.
Yeah, that's right.
But before we get into it, Rem, we have some people to thank.
Yeah, sure, okay.
What, you don't want to thank the nice people who wanted you to watch this?
I don't know how I feel about them.
You don't know?
I'm processing right
You're
now.
processing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the people we have to thank for this one is a nice little chunk. We've got a lovely gentleman by the name of... Let's see, we've got Caleb, Jerry, The only name I've got here is Ore Ore, which I don't know if it's an actual name, but that's what they call themselves.
It's their birth name.
Let's see. Cassidy, Matthias, and another Jerry. Oh, that's the same Jerry. Jerry, you get your name twice because I like it so much.
That's a lot of folks.
Yeah.
What did they think I'd think of it? Did any of them specify?
Most of them wanted to see how you'd react to a genuine horror anime.
All right.
Another chunk of them were like, I really like the visual novel for this story, because Remington, if it wasn't obvious from the get-go, every story in Higurashi is adapted from the visual novel game. And a lot of people are confused by the anime or aren't as satisfied with the anime. But all in all, people wanted to think that you'd like it because it's got a lot of child murder in it.
It does. I would say that I liked approximately 1/4 of what I have seen so far.
Oh no.
and then 3/4 I sort of thought were really bad.
Oh no. Well, this is a Halloween-esque episode, so we might as well get to the horror of the fans. All right, Remington, let's get into it then. What's your big issues?
Well, I think that it had a strong start, right? It was a crazy start, insane start, which at the same time, even though it was such a strong start, in a way I feel like it ends up diluting what could have been, because I personally, and aforementioned mini spoilers incoming, I personally would have strongly preferred a more Madokan method where they don't so strongly in your face be like, yeah, it's super spooky, and then try and fake you out, but it's not going to fake you out.
So you wanted a reverse of it. You didn't like how it opened with the bloody stuff, and then it took a little too long to get to the bloody stuff.
Well, especially because it sort of felt like, for especially the first episode, but also the first couple, it felt like it was trying to subvert those expectations, and it was trying to get you into a sort of like teenage drama slices life style mentality, which it could have done if it hadn't so strongly emphasized in the intro and then the opening that it was going to be super dark and spooky, right? And so instead of being like, oh, this is real pleasant, you're just left being like, okay, but when does it go haywire though? And so it felt like they were strongly trying to mislead you, but they also rendered that impossible.
Yeah, they kind of take a almost Hitchcockian approach to it, where they want you to know what's going to happen and they want you to be anticipating how it's going to happen.
But unfortunately, they also try to have that part, but then they also try and do the Madokan subversion of look how cute and look how playful and simple and easy it is. But that half falls horribly flat because you can't combine those two. That's not how it works. Or maybe you can, but you shouldn't like this.
Well, Remington, I've got something that might change your perspective a little bit, or at least make you curious for the future of this show. Because each episode arc, usually about 4 to 5 episodes a peach.
Yep.
A peach?
I love them. Good old peaches.
4 to 5 episodes a piece are their own self-contained arcs in the story, and depending on what choices you made in the visual novel game version is what story you would get out of it. And the thing about this show that is very strange but kind of interesting, Rem, is that by the end of the 4th episode and you start the 5th episode, everything that happened in the first 4 episodes resets back to the beginning.
Okay.
So we're getting a bunch of stories that have reset throughout the entire series, all culminating into a bunch of different stories that make a lot of things clear in the individual stories that ultimately culminate into one big massive story that is both interesting and fun for a visual novel, but kind of a very strange execution as far as the anime itself goes.
Okay, well, that significantly contributes to my overall thoughts, and in fact, it actually strongly supports what my overall thesis will be, but we'll get to that closer to the end.
All right. So, Remington, what would you like to discuss first?
Well, we can just go down the line. It starts out, and it starts out with just character and exposition dump, and unfortunately, almost I would say a good 60 to 70% of everything I've seen so far has been in expositional discussion, which is a little bit of an oof. There's a whole lot of telling and a tiny bit of showing. And that was real rough.
It's definitely suffers from early 2000s anime syndrome for certain, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and it's so often not even visually interesting, and they show they can be by like some very small bits and pieces that are really interesting, but the vast majority of the time, it's two okay animated characters talking to one another just back and forth again and again and again, and it's real rough. Also, the pacing is so weird.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it has, like, nothing is happening, and yet still too much is happening, is how I would describe it. Because it'll move from, like, apparently major thing to apparently major thing without really building or developing these things in any meaningful way, with also just a lot of filler dead time. So you're left, especially in episodes like 3 and a little bit of 4, but mostly 3, with these, like, super melodramatic moments that I don't really understand the importance of because they haven't developed the importance of it. So I'm left thinking, okay, this is dramatic, but the only reason why I feel like this is intense is because of the music. It's fucking weird.
I had a feeling this would be a bit of your reaction, Rem. I almost hesitated to only show you one story arc of this series just because of how slow it is and not properly organized, as it were. A lot of the fans of the visual novel are actually kind of upset with this adaptation as a whole because they try to cram, a whole visual novel storyline, which can take several hours, into, about 2.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. I felt like you could have condensed it into like 45 minutes with everything that happened, while at the same time, it still wouldn't be ideal, but there was a lot of boring filler that didn't contribute anything at all. Like, the characters, okay, I guess I understand them, mostly because I'm told about them, but their interactions are all just the basic ass shit we've seen a million times. This to me, and it felt like this in almost every single way, it felt like you had a bunch of people just entering college, right? And they decided they were given an assignment to make a project, and they were very ambitious. They went for it. They created something, but there's just a lot of lacking polish in almost every single way. The dialogue in this show is not great. The characters are at best fine, and the visuals, the animation itself, it would be good if you're like a very much amateur character designer and animator. Like, it felt like a student project to the T.
A lot of anime from these studios back then actually had that similar style, and as time went on, they went back and refurbished them, and I wouldn't be upset if they were to go back and make a brand new revitalized version, a better version of Higurashi, but whether or not that'll happen is not too likely. Just for some perspective, the same studio that gave us Higurashi also gave us the original Fruits Basket anime.
That makes so much sense. And another thing they do that's very frustrating to me, Shaun, and they do this at the end of almost every single episode. They are a big fan of the cliffhanger, which is fine, but they're a fan of the shitty cliffhanger.
Oh.
See, there's two kinds of cliffhangers, Shaun, and some are very bad, some are very good.
One is filled with peanut butter and chocolate.
Exactly. What distinguishes the two, I think that so often, and this can work well, but it usually doesn't, because it's the lazy cliffhanger. That's what I'm going to call it. The lazy cliffhanger, where instead of ending on anything, you end at a promise of something to come without doing anything first, right? So nothing happens, but something might. And then unfortunately, so often, still nothing does. That's a lazy cliffhanger.
It's the next time on Dragon Ball Z effect.
Yeah, and whereas I think a good cliffhanger, you don't have nothing happen with the promise of maybe something to come. You have something happen, something crazy, right? You have something crazy, but unresolved. And so there's still that question of, oh, wait, what? What does this mean? What's going to happen? But you've actually committed to a goddamn decision. Unfortunately, Higurashi does a whole lot of lazy cliffhangers where nothing happens, but it's like, oh no, maybe this will happen. And then 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't. What it promises is unfulfilled. That is the lazy cliffhanger. It's bad storytelling. It'll get people to watch the next episode, but they will very often feel like you haven't lived up to what you promised you would give. And so unfortunately, with those 2 types of cliffhangers, it chooses the lazy one almost every single time. And that's an oof. That's rough. Come on, you can do better.
And hilariously enough, Remington, they do better. Just in all the later stories. Arguably, I think the first story is probably one of the weakest of the lot, because it is, as you say, a shit ton of pointless exposition with not a whole lot happening. Believe it or not, Remington, first time I tried watching this, I dropped it myself.
That's totally fair. And maybe it gets better, because the 4th episode is the only decent episode we have seen so far. The first 3 are fucking abysmal. They are boring, they're bland, they're weird, they're confusing, not because of the content. I felt like I understood everything that's happening. I just don't understand what it's relevant, and I had such a hard time trying to figure out what they wanted me to think. I didn't know what their intention was. For most of the time, I was wondering, okay, are we supposed to feel also paranoid about these 2 friends of his? Or are we supposed to think that he's going a little crazy? Are we supposed to believe in the curse? And I believe now that you're supposed to sort of be feeling that paranoia, right? And you're supposed to have those questions. But I didn't know what it wanted from me. It's not that it's not that I didn't know. It's not that I had these questions and that was bad. It's that I didn't even know if these were the questions I should be asking, which is not good storytelling. You can make them ask questions, but they should at least know which questions they are asking. It was so weird, and not in a great way.
Oh, Rem.
It was weird in a, this is my first anime that I've written kind of weird, where it's like you just don't know the ins and outs of storytelling yet.
Oh, man, Rem, this is one of the rare times where I agree with you on just about everything. The only reason I'm not, as negative about these things is because I've seen the whole story, and a lot of the stuff kind of, what's the phrase I'm looking for, kind of coalesces into a more clear picture.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's worth that clear picture is, well, something you'll have to decide on yourself when you finish the story. But for those first 4 episodes, man, it's amazing it got as popular as it did.
Imagine the first episode, right, Shaun? Keep most of it the same, which unfortunately means most of it is still going to be a bit weird, very badly paced, and not great. But at the very end, you change one thing. So you have the main character you can get him super worried and concerned that Rena, whatever you want to call it. That Rena is going to come and maybe she's going to hurt him, right? He's very worried. Imagine if the ending of the first episode isn't him being worried, maybe she's gonna come, and that's the end. Once again, lazy cliffhanger. But instead, he doesn't announce that he's put it together. He just sees that, and you can tell you put it together just like he does. And then the end of the first episode, she drops the giant cleaver right on his skull. That would be amazing, because then it would show you that it doesn't fuck around, which it wanted to show you in episode 4, which I appreciated, but it took a long time getting there. And then it would show you that there's actually like consequences. It's willing to make bold decisions, which now I believe it sort of does, but it'll be very lazy and half-ass on its way there.
The decisions it ends up making are about as bold as you could hope for, really, Remington.
Tell me that my first episode wouldn't be a million times better.
Oh no, completely. You would have taken probably the worst of the group of stories and made it into a much more interesting story.
Yeah, but eventually, we sort of, it's essentially a story where the main dude, he starts getting super paranoid hearing about it. You have a detective who's like the worst detective in the world.
Oh, I love how incompetent he is.
He's just like, hey, kid, let me tell you everything about the case. Also, here are a bunch of details otherwise, which, if anything, I would say that he is, like, mostly responsible for everything.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Just his incompetence, like, not even his malice, just because he's like, hey, kiddo, did you know that your friends are lying to you and there's also a lot of shady shit going on? I'm not saying you're in danger, but if anything happens to you, let me know. And it's like, what the fuck?
It's like old school B-movie horror cops, and I love that so much about it.
It was so weird because it doesn't even seem to, like, deliberately be portraying him as the world's most incompetent man, but he is. He definitely is. We haven't seen a cop this incompetent since the whole Gun Gale arc of Sword Art Online. Like, it's so wild. And then I'm still a little uncertain whether it's just psychological or more likely if it's just based on an actual evil curse, because they seem to be going the actual evil curse route, which is fine, even though I really would have preferred the purely psychological route, which would still leave some questions that it did not adequately explore or explain. Maybe it will. But it looks like they're going the curse route, which is unfortunate in my mind.
Well, Rem, we can't always have our dream ending of Hereditary.
Oh, man. Oh, that would have been such a good... We created a great ending for Hereditary that was very similar. It was all in their head, but unfortunately we were disappointed. Hereditary, also terrible movie.
Yeah, even though for some reason people rated it as the best horror movie of that year when, Quiet Place came out.
Quiet Place, real good. Hereditary, absolute shit. Anyway, so I thought that maybe it was going to save itself by being a little bit more psychological. It wasn't. Instead, it just was sort of a clusterfuck. I was not a fan. I think, genuinely, you could have condensed those 4 episodes, which the 4th was the only one where things happen. He gets super paranoid. He starts swinging a bat just like some other student who we sort of learn about. We're told about them-ish, in a very weird way. I feel like they were not explained well at all. And
Well, you don't think tearing out your own throat is a good way to kill yourself?
everything is weird. And plus, so often it shied away from the intense shit. Like, you get to the 4th episode, and eventually it shows what it showed in the opening, which is main character going ham, beating the shit out of these 2 girls, who I guess, I thought it was, like, super psychological, and that he was imagining all this crazy shit, but I guess all that actually happened. I guess they were also insane. And then he beats the shit out of them, but they got the drug into him, I guess, so he claws out his throat as well. And it doesn't show him clawing out his throat. It does show him hitting, like, their arm and a leg once, which was nice and intense for those very brief moments. But so often it does shy away from it and then just show you the aftermath, which can work, but it
felt a little too safe for what it wanted to be.
Yeah, it at one point it makes like these very strong decisions, but unfortunately those few strong decisions are shrouded in the safest decisions they could possibly make at any goddamn turn. What I ultimately feel, my overall thoughts on it, I thought the 4th episode, it was decent. Things actually happened in that one, unlike every other episode. But I felt like this has a real solid potential, but it has one of the most poor executions of this potential, and one of the absolute worst builds and pacings that I have ever seen in anything. This is one of the worst horror media I have ever consumed, and that sucks because it feels like it could have really awesome things for it. It shows these moments of glorious potential that would make me want to love it. But unfortunately, it's just so encased in mediocrity that I can't.
Oh, Rem, this is gonna piss you off then.
Oh, fuck.
Guess how highly it's rated.
Oh, it better not be in the 8s.
8.5.
God damn it! What the fuck, people?
And that's because the rest of the story gets much better.
Holy shit.
Which is why I was hesitant to only show you these first 4 episodes, but at the same time, that's also the biggest complaint people have with the series. I say all the time that the manga does not matter, and in this case, the visual novel doesn't matter. It's the same principle. But according to some diehard fans of this series, as well as other visual novel-based anime, they really screwed the pooch on the first couple episodes of this series so badly that people are livid about it, and yet, by the end of this series, people will tout it as one of the most iconic horror yandere anime out there, which is amazing to think about when its first 4 episodes are mediocre at best.
Yeah, I really think that the 4th episode, the only good one, but even then, it was still very flawed in a lot of ways. It's just that the first 3 episodes of this show were some of the most tedious, strange, and mind-numbing that I have ever seen doing this podcast. Like, it's trying to usurp Fist of the North Star in how bored out of my mind I got.
Oh, see, now you have to bring that back up again.
It's rare that I reference it, because mostly I don't give a shit about it. And it was rough. It was a rough journey. I was optimistic. I thought it was going to be real good. And it shows me things that really make me wish that it was only its best bits. But even with what I've seen, it shows me that even if it gets better, I do not have confidence that it will become amazing for me, because the flaws that it has shown with dialogue and character and animation and story and pacing, those are things that tend to stay with a series. Even if they improve some elements, those cracks are gonna show. So I don't have much confidence. It will almost definitely get better. How can it fucking not? But I have a hard time believing that it would get good.
Well, Remington, this is definitely going to be one of the ones we have to make a return to, multiple returns to probably, because clearly hundreds upon thousands of people love this show, like an absurdly amount. So much so that it actually also has a sequel series as well.
Oh, fuck.
That's even higher rated, which is amazing to think when you have such a rough start like this. But then again, a lot of older anime do have incredibly slow, poorly written starts. We've explored that many times in this show. Most of the time I try to deny it because it hurts me, because you're usually insulting my childhood, but that's besides the point. But with Higurashi, I'm okay talking about it because I dropped it the first time I watched it, which is not something I usually do, especially not for something as highly touted as this. But after going back and researching it and finishing it, and I even played a little bit of the visual novel as well, just to get a feel for that.
I feel like I would probably like the visual novel more.
You would.
Because visual novels, I can enjoy visual novels. Those can be pleasant. Those can be enjoyable. And plus with the potential that it showed, maybe I would just prefer going to the source more than whatever.
Well, Remington, that's an interesting idea. We might have to actually give that a go at some point. But other than that, Remington, overall, it seems like you were very sad, very disappointed, and very confused.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty darn well.
Well, good to know that that's basically how everybody feels the first time they watch Higurashi for the first time. But don't worry, Rem. We'll come back to it one day. Maybe we'll play the game. We'll see how it changes for you. Yay. Maybe your opinions will be bolstered. Maybe they'll be crushed. And maybe the people who really love Higurashi and want to murder you right now with a baseball bat in the similar fashion.
Well, let me just say, do they love it for the first 4 episodes, though? Come on, give a brother some slack.
As far as I can tell, not so much. They were enthralled by it at first, and for the most part stopped. There are some people who will defend it till the day they die, but I'm not one of those people.
Right now, my stance would just be go watch Mirai Nikki or Madoka Magica.
You know what? That's a good stance to have, because that's what I'd rather be doing right now anyways. But until then, Remington, I just have one final question to ask you. You want to try and watch some more Higurashi with me sometime?
Oof. Shaun, currently, I don't get it, and for the time being, I don't think I want to right now.
Fair enough, Remington. We shall have to see how you feel in the future. But until then, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the mild confusion of poor story pacing that is our kind of horrendous podcast, then please leave a review on whatever platform you listen on, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, or if you really want to help us grow, word of mouth is the best way to do it.
And if you would like to contact us directly, whether it is for a question, comment, recommendation, or anything else, then you can either tweet us at AnimeConPod on Twitter, or you can send an email over onto animeoutofcontext@gmail.com.
Once again, thank you all for watching, and as always, don't fuck your sister. Happy Halloween.